what's going on? It's Preacher. Have a look at the Holy Priest first as we begin our little session of looking at the priests. I thought I'd get what is considered to generally be the weaker one of the three out of the way, and plus it's my favourite as well. What a great way to start for me. I don't care about the actual raid mathematics because I don't play a priest as a raider. But I still love this thing. My original character ever in World of Warcraft is this guy right here. This benediction is legit vanilla style benediction when it counted. I love this thing and so glad to have it back. Thank you Blizzard Mods for restoring it for me. The Holy Priest, what is it? It should be, let's say what it should be. It should be God's gift to HPS. Healing per second. The Holy Priest should be the one that just brings life, right? It should bring fucking life to your raiders. It has one purpose, and that is if you get hurt, it brings you back to life. None of these fucking silly absorbs or alternative mechanics or anything like that. It should be a health machine just drilling it out there. Unfortunately, Warlords of Draenor, it started quite well. There were many raiding Holy Priests, but they kind of dipped down a little bit now with the rise, of course, the ever-present ominous overlords bow before the disciplined priests. And that is with good reason as well. I think that's fair to say. So the Holy Priest had a good look in at the early WoD, but now it's starting to disappear again off the face of the earth. And hopefully it will maintain some sort of presence, because I actually think it's a wonderful, wonderful spec. It has so many tools in the toolkit that are all different things, from the very, very unique Binding Heal, which I could cast it on that thing. The very unique Binding Heal to Prayer of Mending, which is such a unique and interesting spell. Circle of Healing. You've got Cascades, you've got Talents, you've got all these things. You've got different Chakras, which should be amazing. We can switch around and do different things. We can then go ham mode and turn into our evil, evil Chastise Chakra and do extra damage and all that kind of stuff. So that's what it is. It's a health machine. That's what it does. It churns out health. The reason, I should point this out here for anybody who's thinking of rolling a Holy Priest, I want some confirmation. The only reason it tends not to get much of a look in is other classes can kind of do those things better, and Dis isn't really to be beaten. And that's the problem. It's not that Dis is better. They're just different. Yeah, Dis, I think it was done quite well. I think on the articles I read on MMO Champions, some people seem to agree with my gut feeling is it's not worse than Dis. It's just different. But the different style that Holy is, which is producing HPS, can be done by other classes, where what Dis brings to the table can, and you generally want one healing priest in general in your raid setup. So that's why Holy tends not to get a look in. That does not mean it sucks. It does not suck. But Dis kind of works better. So there you go. That's the thing. Nothing wrong with Holy, but Dis kind of works better. So that's the situation right there. So let's look at what Holy brings to the table and how you can play it. So a lot of focus on Renew. Prayer of Mending's a thing. Circle of Healing, a unique spell there. Heals up to 600 allies instant. It just goes boom like that and just heals shit that's all around you. Prayer of Healing, which is god-awful, terrible in all fucking ways. 12,000 mana for 13k healing. Woo! Are you excited? Wait for it. It's the most depressing spell in the arsenal and is generally never used. Bye! And that's generally Holy's simple stuff. It's always surprised me in the specialization it doesn't mention your chakras, which is of course a huge part of this. What we have is 2 chakras as Holy before we even get into the spells. Well, 3 chakras actually. 2 healing chakras and a DPS chakra. Most healing classes in the game right now are capable of doing damage in some form during their downtime, and that damage is for free. So if you look at a Shaman, a Resto Shaman, their Lightning Bolt, Lava Burst and all that kind of stuff doesn't cost any mana. So if they don't have anything to heal, they can go ahead and do damage. Doesn't cost any mana. And that's the same for the Resto Druids. Their Wrath doesn't cost anything. Similar sort of idea. Yeah, you can do some damage, won't cost you mana, allow you to actually regen mana, instead of having some boring regen talent like, what do we have in the past? Divine Plea, Innovate, that kind of useless stuff. Now you can actually do damage while you're regenerating mana in the periods of downtime that we see in the game. Similarly, Holy Priests and Priests in general have DPS spells. Now, as you'll see, if we're in a healing chakra, which is either blue chakra, which is Sanctuary, which is considered our AoE, or yellow chakra, which is Serenity, which is our single target focused chakra, we actually have the third one. Now, if you're not in your Chastise, red chakra, yeah, then your DPS spells actually cost you. Yes, they do. You can see Smite, only a couple of thousand mana, but they do cost mana, which means the habit that we used to get into, or we're training most of you to get into on your healers, as we've looked at many now, is, oh, there's nothing much to do. I'm going to start DPSing, yeah? I'm going to start doing DPS. I'm going to start smiting. As you can see, it actually costs you mana to do that, and generally not a great idea. In order to make them free, you do have to switch over to Chastise. You have to switch over, which means your Shadow Word Pain will do some damage, and your Holy Word and blah, blah, blah. You get Holy Word Chastise, which is pretty shit. But now you can see my smite no longer costs any mana as I switch over to it. So that's what's going on there with your downtime. The main point to take away from that is if you've played other healers, don't just be sort of derpily going into DPS when you're not actually doing much of anything. That happens in every single fight. It does. In Warlords of Draenor, they are designed to have periods of lulls and downtimes where there's not much to be done. Don't fall into the trap of just starting to DPS without considering are you in your DPS chakra and whether or not it's safe to do that, as chakra changing has a 10-second cooldown. Yeah? 10-second cooldown associated with it, so don't goof yourself up. Now, chakras was a wonderful idea. Absolutely amazing idea. Wonderful, wonderful thing. They've kind of had the wheels taken off a little bit. They're no longer as punishing to being the wrong one. At the same time, that means it's no longer that amazing to be in the correct one. No longer that amazing. It used to be much more powerful. While not being like desperately, if you were in your AoE chakra like I am right now, that you just couldn't heal anybody single target. It's not like that, but right now it's way less forgiving than it ever has been. And that kind of takes the skill ceiling down a bit, in my opinion. Although Holy has other ways of actually pushing its skill level up. Being in the wrong chakra for a couple of seconds or whatever isn't going to be the end of the world. As you can see, my AoE heals can reduce the cooldown of your circle of healing spell by 1 second, right? Okay. That's not that big of a deal. Handy when I'm AoE healing a lot, but not amazing. And then you have heals can reduce if we go over to the single target, your single target healing spells to refresh the duration of renew, which is very cool, okay? So we get this wonderful holy word, Serenity, and when we press it, not only does it refresh our renew, but we also get this Serenity debuff, increasing crit heals on the target, so our crit heals and single target heals do critical strikes more often, and so on and so forth. It also means we can refresh renew and keep renew ticking on many targets without actually having to cast renew. Okay, so various playstyles to take into account there. Various playstyles and switching around and being a good player. Like I say, some people consider this advanced. I don't. A 10-second cooldown, I think it used to be 30 seconds back in the day. A 10-second cooldown isn't that punishing. Just be aware of which chakra you're in. You can see how as a macro, it just switches between the two. And that's all you need to do is have one keybind to swap between them. But if you get caught in the wrong one for a few seconds or even 10 seconds, it's not the end of the world. It really is not. The worst situation you could be in is having to refresh renew, which is 2,000 mana. So forgive yourself a little bit. Forgive yourself a little bit. Let's talk about the talents. Let's jump into it. So, talents, you've got to take Desperate Prayer if you're at the level 15. I can't see why you would take Bulwark. It's pretty fucking shit. I mean, I used to love Angelic Bulwark, but in WoD, it's just garbage. It's absolutely fucking garbage. And Spectral Guise in PvE, not so much. You want Desperate Prayer, have it ready to go. Heals you for 22% of your maximum health. It's just there as an on-demand save your ass spell, okay? Should you need it, it's there to be done. It's instant, doesn't cost you any mana. Good, good. At level 13, always a voice of debate. Always a debatable choice. Always. Especially if you're rolling with a Disc Priest, okay? Which is rare that there'll be a Disc Priest and a Holy Priest. Some of you will have that situation, but most of you won't. I love Body and Soul. I absolutely love Body and Soul. But a lot of people swear by Angelic Feather, which is placing the feather on the ground, granting the first ally to walk through it 60% increased movement speed for 6 seconds, maximum 3 charges. So you're plotting feathers on the way for them to go. Body and Soul, I prefer because sometimes what I tend to see is I'm quite observant on the raid. I'm very used to, from the years of playing, is seeing other people deal with things, and I see them moving, and people can be a bit erratic sometimes, and I love just clicking them, giving them a Body and Soul, especially to the tanks, and just letting them run off and go and do their thing. On top of that, it adds it to Leap of Faith as well, and that's something I take a lot of advantage of when I'm raiding on my Priest. I very much think that advanced Priest playstyle is knowing where and when to give people movement speeds and life grips correctly. If you can use Life Grip, some people don't use it. They see it as purely a troll spell. It is not. Leap of Faith is not a trolly spell. As much as it gets abused by dickheads, that's fine and dandy, but that is not the use of it. It's very, very good for making sure people are in the correct position. If you are of the raid awareness where, let's say, Blackhand, and you can see people have stood behind the wrong bonfire to get broken or anything, and you can be the guy who's actually like, I got this, I'll fucking grip you over here, we're not going to run into situations. Life gripping tanks back into position, doing all that kind of thing, and especially combine that with Body and Soul and the ability to move back out of position and get back into position quickly. I love this. Angelic Feather can be taken by the wrong target. It can be, and sometimes it does happen if you're trying to be like, where's this guy running? I want to drop it in front. What I like to see is who has the debuff, click them, give them a shield, There goes, they've got the body and soul. But obviously, if there's a Disc Priest, which there wasn't in the last stuff I did, then Angelic Feather would come out better. But I totally understand the argument. Phantasm, not really. Level 45, you kind of got to take Power Word Solace, unfortunately. Mindbender is more fun, in my opinion, because one, it looks way cooler, and it's like this big mana reflective cooldown. Whereas Power Word Solace is something you have to manage. It's a 10-second cooldown. Okay, Power Word Solace is... But Power Word Solace, if used correctly, gives you way more mana. Way more mana than Mindbender does. This is your mana conservation tree. Surge of Light is just shite. Nowhere even close to the other two. But if you're not good with Power Word Solace, as you can see, I have it on... Oh, that one. I have it there. And if you're not good, I have this block here dedicated to Power Word Solace. And I also have it on a macro that will attack my target's target. Yeah, without me having to change target. So it's a very simple macro you can easily Google if you want to use something like that. But that's ultimately it. And I'm quite good at managing it, so I tend to get the most benefit out of it. If you're not good at managing it, Mindbender will give you more mana back than Power Word Solace. Yeah, it's all good saying, yeah, Power Word Solace gives you the most mana, guys. Go and take it. But if you're pretty crappy at managing it, which you might be as you're learning or just getting used to these very short cooldown spells, which are like 10 seconds, then it can result in Mindbender would have given you more mana back because it's like a big cooldown that you can use every 1 minute instead of every 10 seconds, yeah? You use 6 times as many Power Word Solaces as you are Mindbenders. It's as simple as that, guys. Level 60 doesn't fucking matter. Level 75... It's a real shame. Divine Insight, I don't have the 2 and 4 piece from Blackrock Foundry, unfortunately, yet on my Priest, which means Divine Insight is way weaker for me because I do way less Prayer of Mendings, okay? But... if you don't have that, and you're not getting as many Prayer of Mendings going on, Twist of Fate or Power Infusion. Now, Power Infusion is kind of okay. I like Power Infusion, and I would wish it was the better of the two. I don't believe it is, although it's my favourite of the 3. Power Infusion is great because, yes, it gives you huge haste bursts. And as a healer, as we said, there are peaks and troughs in WoD, where sometimes you need a lot of healing and then sometimes you don't. Power Infusion marries up quite nicely with that, with having a 2-minute cooldown. Unfortunately, people see it as like a mana reduction cooldown. It just isn't. It never has been. And I think that's something you need to be aware of. It's like, oh, I could use this as mana saving cooldown. No. Because you have so much extra haste under that effect, you just cast way more spells, which offsets that mana reduction. It's not a mana reduction cooldown. I shouldn't think of it that way. If you're popping this to save mana, you're doing it wrong. It's for them burst moments, yeah? So the moments you need to churn out some healing. If you're not farming, you've got these big phases where there's tantrums and there's fucking epicenters and all that kind of stuff going down. Power Infusion lines up nicely. Having said that, Twist of Fate is a passive, which is kind of less interesting, but all healing, after healing attack below 35% health, you deal 15% increased the healing and damage, okay? This happens all the fucking time. The harder the content gets, when you get into like Mythic especially, you are all the time going to be healing someone who's at 35% health or below. It happens all the time, which means you'll probably have Twist of Fate up nearly the entire duration of the fight, which makes it just superb. It's 15% all the time. Okay, so I get used to using it. You might not see the benefits in something like LFR, but as you start to get deeper into your raids, you will see the benefit. At level 90... yeah, it's awkward this. Divine Star is shite, so take that into account. Divine Star is just shitty. Unless you need like such perfect conditions to make this thing work, it might as well go home and fucking have a cup of tea and rethink its life. Halo, on the other hand, can be really good and stronger than Cascade. However, Halo works with the distance people are away, so you have to fuck off to Japan or something and then start casting Halo to get the benefit. Cascade has none of those restrictions. It's like Divine Star needs everybody clumped up inside one arsehole. Halo needs you to run off to somewhere. Cascade just requires none of that. At all. You can just cast it wherever you are and it will seek people out and it will do its thing. Cascade is just so much, in practicality use, in reality use, it's just so much better. It is. It's just so much better than the other two without having to stack on these stupid requirements. Unless you're trying to kind of win some HPS ranking or whatever and really thinking about it on farm content, Cascade every single time. Level 100, unfortunately, Saving Grace and Clarity of Purpose are fucking shit. Words of Mending isn't that much better because Prayer of Mending is pretty shitty. It's pretty shitty. But unfortunately, it's our only choice. Really. I'm sorry to tell you. Saving Grace looks cool. But for a raid environment, no. You don't want to be giving yourself 15% stacking healing debuffs for 8 seconds at a time. No, you don't want to do that. And Clarity of Purpose just is nowhere close. You need Words of Mending, unfortunately. It's your only choice, so get used to it. But as you do get your set bonuses moving up, then Words of Mending will have a little bit more love associated with it. Glyphs, this is great. A lot of the choices, surprisingly, don't come from talents. They come from glyphs. There are huge amounts of playstyles with Holy. huge amounts. You can play in all different kind of ways, unless you're going for like mad chakras, or maybe you're trying to maximize just staying in one chakra and all that kind of stuff. And your glyphs need to correspond with that. This is the standard glyph setup, which is Glyph of Lightwell. Lightwell is something you'll have down all the time, preferably somewhere where it can reach everybody. See? Lightwell! Woo! It's a wonderful, wonderful spell. Lightwell is crucial. So Deep Wells will give you more stuff for your Lightwell to do, so it can go and do its little bukkake on any target it finds. Circle of Healing, we essentially use Circle of Healing on cooldown in both chakras. So yeah, in a raid environment, you want that. You want that. The mana cost is no big deal. Mana's not a huge concern to Holy Priests. And Glyph of Renew. It's hard to argue with Glyph of Renew. Either you're renewing it, renew, or refreshing renew in your single target chakra, or you're spamming it like a turret during your AoE downtime. As I said, Prayer of Healing is pretty shite. So in AoE scenarios, we tend to be using Circle of Healing, Cascade, and then filling out with renews. So these renews are very short duration, but heal for 25% more, which means you're putting out pretty goddamn powerful renews all the time while AoE healing. So the Glyph of Renew I kind of think is mandatory. If you're single target, then you're refreshing a super powerful renew. It doesn't matter that its duration is reduced because we're refreshing it. We're not recasting it anyway, especially on the tanks, right? So it's a nice, simple thing. Glyph of Binding Heal is also very inclusive. If you're going like with a pure yellow chakra style, Binding Heal, your Binding Heal now heals a third friendly target within 20 yards. That also refreshes their renew. Okay? Also refreshes their renew. So Glyph of Binding Heal is something you can really consider if you're doing a heavy single target play. If you're doing that, think about it. More mana cost again, but again, mana not a huge deal. Not a huge deal at all. And then you can look at some other things like Glyph of Power Word Shield. If you're not playing with a Disc Priest and you've decided not to be disciplined yourself, which is fine, then this actually turns your Power Word Shield into another instant cast heal. 20% of the absorb from Power Word Shield is converted into healing. Power Word Shield is not god-awful for a Holy Priest, okay? It's still 42,000 damage. Instant cast. 42,000 damage. However, it does come along with this Weakened Soul debuff, which means if you have a Disc Priest in the group, he will shoot you in the fucking face for casting Power Word Shields on people. He'll be like, why are you doing that? My shields are just way better. If you're not playing with a Disc Priest, though, Power Word Shield, 2 thumbs fresh. And also now, with that, refreshes renew as long as you're in yellow chakra. Okay, playstyle. Let's talk first about spells you generally avoid. Not as a rule of thumb, every spell has its purpose. This wonderful toolkit that Holy has should be utilized. But there are certain spells which aren't great. One is hard casting Prayer of Mending. This is almost no scenario where you want to do this. Okay? Sometimes it works, but occasionally there's something better to do, like firing off 2 renews instead. And if it's something's about to happen, and you can time it right so Prayer of Mending will actually benefit, then yes, you can hard cast Prayer of Mending. But gone are the days, such as we had in MOP, where we were just firing Prayer of Mending on cooldown. Don't really do that. As I've already said, Prayer of Healing, not so much. No, it's kind of shitty. And you can do better things than this terrible, terrible spell. Try and avoid it. It costs so much mana. It's like 11,500 mana a time. Oh my god. If you look at Renew, look at how many Renews you can cast on people specifically that aren't tied to like certain people in a party or anything like that. And you can just find them off. Look at how many you can do. 2,400 mana compared to nearly 12,000 mana for Prayer of Healing. Yeah, it's just garbage. Absolutely terrible. Heal. Sounds kind of strange, I know. But Heal is... it's too slow and doesn't really do enough. There will be occasions where you can cast heal. Again, these are not hard and fast rules of spells you should remove from your bars. That's not the case. But what you'll tend to find is that you're either putting renews on people, because renew is one of your most powerful spells as Holy. Very cheap, very efficient. And if someone dips, you'll probably be using something like a flash heal. What they won't do if they suddenly dipped is require the time it takes to cast a heal. What they'll want is a flash heal, which is much, much faster. Yeah? So that tends to be the situation. Heal, you tend not to use a hell of a lot at all. Circle of Healing, you practically keep that thing on cooldown, right? Practically keep it on cooldown. Let's look at chakra-specific things. If you're in yellow chakra, you obviously want to be using your Holy Word Serenity on the tanks, usually. Okay? It's an instant cast heal that will refresh the renew on that target and gives you this wonderful debuff. It's a wonderful spell. Use it on cooldown. Super cheap. 3k mana. 10-second cooldown. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Get used to using it on cooldown. However, if we went over to yellow chakra, a Holy Word Sanctuary, I don't even know what's going on with this thing. It's like so bad. 908 crit. Woo. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't cost any mana, so sure, you can throw it down. You can throw it down on a big cluster of people, but just look at the kind of numbers you get from it with these 500 ticks. Yeah? And understand that, yeah, maybe not so much compared to a renew, which is like 2k. 5k. Yeah, have you seen the big difference between those spells? Yeah, not as important as Holy Word, Serenity, right? Sanctuary, Power Word, Holy Word, Sanctuary, not the greatest thing in the world. Now, it's obviously very difficult for me to show you playstyle out here in our wonderful, wonderful snowy garrison. So we're going to jump into some gameplay and see that down. General rules, use your Shadow Fiend. It only does damage, doesn't give you mana back, unless you spec Mindbender. Light well down. Have some way of tracking your light well and making sure it's inefficient. And don't forget, and make sure it's being efficient, I should say. And don't forget your Binding Heal. Binding Heal is a wonderful gift of a spell. It really is. And people forget they have it because they're so used to just healing other people. Good priests make use of Binding Heal. Find the opportunities to use it and be aware that you have it, as well as your Desperate Prayer. Alright guys, let's jump into some gameplay and see all this in action. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.